They called it the Second Rome, a great city astride Europe and Asia. And its vast empire, which would preserve Greco-Roman culture and transmit it to the West, when Rome itself lay in barbarian hands. The Byzantine Empire, this time on the Western tradition. The power of the Western Roman Empire lasted 5 centuries. The power of Babylon and Assyria rather less than that. The Persian Empire took 3 centuries before Alexander put an end to it, and the British Empire lasted about 2 centuries. But the Byzantine Empire survived longer than any of these. Only Egypt lasted longer. The word Byzantine comes from Byzantium, the old Greek city on the Bosphorus that became the site of Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. The Byzantines called their lands Romania, and they called themselves Romans, Romaioi. And their empire remained for many centuries the only civilized power in all of Europe. Just as we attribute the creation of the Roman Empire to Augustus, so we can attribute the creation of the Byzantine Empire, which was the Second Rome, to Constantine the Great, who transferred the empire's capital to the city that would bear his name, who made the empire a Christian empire, and the emperor into the anointed of the Lord. The Byzantine Empire copied and preserved much of the classical art and literature and Roman law which we have inherited. And the empire's importance to Eastern Europe is even greater because it was Byzantine missionaries and Byzantine prestige that civilized and Christianized the Eastern Slavs from the Baltic to the Balkans and beyond. For example, this 11th century enamel medallion was made in Georgia, which is now part of the Soviet Union. Constantinople was inaugurated as an imperial capital of the Roman Empire in 330, and it survived until 1453, when the Turkish conquest put an end to one imperial tradition and began another, renaming the city Istanbul. But it was a remarkably long run while it lasted. During this more than 1,000 years, the Byzantines conquered and lost several empires. In the 6th century, a Balkan empire was recaptured from the Goths. A Mediterranean empire was built up after a long, hard-fought war, also against the Goths. And an African empire was reconquered from the Vandals. But the African empire and much of the Middle East were lost to the Arabs in the 7th century. Most of the Mediterranean empire was lost about the same time, with the remainder going in the 11th century, and the Balkan empire was lost and partly regained in the 9th century. The trouble with Constantinople, represented here as a classical figure, was that her tradition was Roman. You can tell this is Rome because of her helmet and military dress. Constantinople's imperial vision was that of the old Roman Mediterranean Empire, which it was not well placed to run if you bear in mind the problems of time and scale that had proved too much even for Rome to handle. The average ship would take a week or two to cross the Mediterranean from north to south, 15 days from Constantinople to Alexandria. But it could take as much as 2 or 3 months from east to west, for example from Crete to Carthage or Cadiz. So there were considerable obstacles to the realization of the Byzantines' imperial ambitions. In the 6th century, when the Emperor Justinian, seen here, regained Italy from the Goths and North Africa from Vandals, he exhausted the resources of Byzantium while also ruining Italy's economy and killing a large part of its population. So it was no accident that the Byzantine Empire reached its high point when it became smaller and more defensible between the 8th and 12th centuries. It had survived new waves of barbarian invasions, but equally important, it had lost its outlying possessions to the Arabs and the Slavs and had become more compact. Yet, whatever happened to its outlying empire, Constantinople remained what Paris was, what New York is today. The foremost city of luxury, fashion, and culture, also the city of sin, corruption, and material temptation, all of which, however you look at it, is no mean achievement. The city was built on a high peninsula on the Bosphorus, where Europe comes very close to the Asian shore. Astride both Europe and Asia, Constantinople was a crossroads par excellence. It commanded the route from the Caucasus and the steppes to the Mediterranean, and also the route from the Danube Valley to the Euphrates Valley. The Balkans were its backyard. Asia Minor lay just across the water, and beyond that Syria and Mesopotamia. So Constantinople was perfectly situated to serve as the capital of a realm that bridged East and West, that connected Greco-Roman culture with Christianity and with Oriental civilization. And its history is indeed the bridge that links us with Egypt, which it came to rule, and with Persia, which it fought and finally defeated, and even with Alexander the Great, whose title of Basileus, or royal king, the Byzantines borrowed for their own rulers. For centuries, Constantinople was the repository of Greek and Roman culture and of the tradition that had been built up in preceding ages in Egypt and Babylon and Athens and Rome and Jerusalem. Our civilization wouldn't be the way it is today if the city of Constantine hadn't endured to transmit these traditions, to transmit the Latin of Rome and the Greek of Athens, the skills, the arts, the thought, the memories, to the barbarians of the West and to their gradually more civilized successors. So the survival of the city was crucial because it helped to make our past. Perhaps the most important factor in its survival was the conviction that the empire was willed by God and protected by God and his anointed representatives. On the other hand, it was this same religious conviction that goes a long way to explain the traditionalism, the extreme conservatism of Byzantium. If your state is founded on the will of heaven, why innovate? A Byzantine ruler might be dethroned, and God knows enough of them were by murder as shown here, or palace revolutions or riots in the city. But a change of emperor did not mean a change of policy, except in minor details, because to change it would have been something like changing your faith. And so, with heaven's approval secure, the Byzantine sovereign and the Byzantine state were both defenders of the faith. The concentration of all authority in the hands of God's representative like the emperor depicted here, was in itself a great source of strength.